The palace was quieter than it should have been. In the east wing, 2 guards stood outside a heavy oak door. Their uniforms were crisp, their faces unreadable. But inside, their hearts were breaking. Behind that door was a 7-year-old girl named Princess Eleanor. She sat on the floor of her room, knees pulled to her chest, staring at a silver crown no bigger than her 2 hands. It wasn't real silver. It wasn't studded with jewels. It was made of cardboard and paint, crafted by small fingers that once believed in fairy tales. The crown had belonged to her mother, Queen. Catherine had been gone for 3 months. Cancer had taken her in the spring, and now autumn had arrived cold and unforgiving. The entire kingdom had mourned. But no one mourned like Eleanor. She hadn't spoken in weeks. The guards, Marcus and Thomas, had served the royal family for over a decade. They had watched Eleanor grow from a giggling baby into a bright, curious child. They had seen her run through the corridors with her mother, laughing so loud the paintings seemed to smile. Now they heard nothing. Marcus glanced at Thomas. His jaw tightened. They both knew what was coming. Down the marble hallway, heels clicked with sharp, deliberate precision. The sound echoed like a countdown Camilla was approaching. She wasn't royalty by blood. She was the king's new companion, a woman who had entered the palace only 2 months after the queen's death. Officially, she was an advisor. Unofficially, she had already moved into the queen's chambers. The staff whispered about her. Some said she had been waiting in the shadows for years. Others said the king was too grief-stricken to see clearly. But everyone agreed on one thing. Camilla wanted Eleanor gone. If you're feeling this story already, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. Camilla appeared, draped in a black silk gown that seemed too elegant for a Tuesday afternoon. Her eyes were cold and calculating. She looked at Marcus and Thomas the way someone might look at furniture. "Open the door," she said. Marcus didn't move. "The princess requested privacy, ma'am." "I don't recall asking for your opinion, Marcus." Her smile was thin, sharp as a blade. I said, "Open the door." Thomas shifted slightly, placing himself more firmly in front of the entrance. With respect, only the king or the princess herself can grant access to her private quarters. Camilla's eyes narrowed. The king is occupied, and that child has been locked in there long enough. She needs discipline, not coddling. "She needs time," Marcus said quietly. For a moment no one spoke. The tension hung in the air like smoke. Camilla stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You think you're protecting her? But you're only making this harder. That girl is broken. She's weak. And if you keep treating her like fragile glass, she'll shatter completely." Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his face neutral. "She's mourning her mother. Her mother is dead." Camilla's words landed like stones. "And the sooner Eleanor accepts that, the better. Now move aside, or I'll have you both removed from duty." Behind the door, Eleanor heard every word. She clutched the cardboard crown tighter, her small hands trembling. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she made no sound. She had learned that silence was safer. Thomas looked at Marcus. A silent conversation passed between them. They both knew they could lose their positions. They could lose everything, but some things mattered more than a paycheck. Marcus straightened his shoulders and met Camilla's gaze. "No." The single word hung in the air like a declaration of war. Camilla's face flushed with rage. "You dare." "We serve the crown," Thomas said firmly. "And right now, the crown is a little girl who just lost her mother. We're not moving." Camilla stared at them, her eyes blazing. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she smiled, cold and dangerous. "You'll regret this," she whispered. She turned and walked away, her heels echoing down the corridor like a promise. Inside the room, Eleanor pressed the cardboard crown to her heart, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something other than emptiness. She felt hope. That evening, the king summoned Marcus and Thomas to his study. King Edward looked older than his 43 years. Grief had carved lines into his face that hadn't been there before. His eyes, once bright and commanding, now seemed distant and hollow. He sat behind his desk, fingers steepled, saying nothing as the two guards entered. Camilla stood beside him, her hand resting possessively on the back of his chair. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, bowing slightly. The king looked up slowly, as if waking from a dream. "Camilla tells me there was an incident today." "Not an incident, sir," Thomas replied carefully. "A misunderstanding about protocol." "Protocol." Camilla's voice dripped with contempt. "They refused a direct order. They blocked me from entering Eleanor's room." The king's brow furrowed. "Is this true?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "Princess Eleanor requested privacy. We were following her wishes, as is our duty." "She's a child," Camilla snapped. "She doesn't get to decide she's the princess," Thomas interrupted, his voice steady. "And with respect, ma'am, you don't have authority over her private chambers." Camilla's face flushed red. "Edward, are you going to let them speak to me this way?" The king rubbed his temples. He looked exhausted, like a man carrying a weight too heavy to bear. "Marcus, Thomas, you've served this family well. But Camilla has been helping me with many things, Eleanor included." "Eleanor doesn't need Camilla's help," Marcus said. Right. The words coming out before he could stop them. The room went silent. Camilla's eyes glittered with triumph. There it is. The insubordination. "Edward, you see it now, don't you? They're poisoning your daughter against me." "We would never," Thomas started. "Eleanor won't speak to me," Camilla continued, her voice rising. "She won't even look at me. And why? Because these two and the rest of the staff have been filling her head with nonsense. They want her to hate me." "She doesn't hate you," Marcus said quietly. "She doesn't know you. And she's still mourning her mother." "Catherine has been gone for 3 months," Camilla said coldly. "At some point, life must continue." Marcus felt something snap inside him. 3 months. 3 months since the woman who gave birth to her, who raised her, who loved her, died. "And you think that's enough time for a 7-year-old to just move on?" "Marcus," the king said sharply, but Marcus couldn't stop. "Princess Eleanor sits in that room every day, holding a crown her mother made her. She doesn't eat unless we bring her food. She doesn't sleep through the night. She cries so quietly we can barely hear it through the door. And you want to know why she won't talk to the woman who's sleeping in her mother's bed?" The words hung in the air like an accusation. The king's face went pale. "That's enough, is it?" Thomas stepped forward, his voice steady and firm. "Your Majesty, we've served you faithfully for years. We're not speaking out of disrespect. We're speaking because someone needs to. That little girl is suffering, and instead of healing, she's being pushed aside." Camilla slammed her hand on the desk. "This is outrageous. Edward, you need to dismiss them now." The king stood slowly, his hands trembling slightly. For a moment, he looked like he might collapse. "Leave us." "Both of you, Your Majesty," Marcus began. "I said leave." The shout echoed through the study. It was the voice of a man at the edge of breaking. Marcus and Thomas exchanged a glance, then bowed and left the room, as the door closed behind them. They heard Camilla's voice, smooth and persuasive. "You see what I mean, darling? They're undermining you, undermining us." In the hallway, Thomas leaned against the wall, exhaling slowly. "We're going to lose our positions." "I know," Marcus said. "Was it worth it?" Marcus thought of Eleanor, sitting alone in the dark, clutching that cardboard crown. Yes. That night, a new order was issued. Effective immediately, Marcus and Thomas were to be reassigned. They would no longer guard Princess Eleanor's chambers. 2 new guards, handpicked by Camilla, would take their place. When Marcus heard the news, he felt something cold settle in his stomach. He found Thomas in the guards' quarters, packing his few belongings. "We can't leave her," Marcus said. Thomas looked up, his face grim. "We don't have a choice. There's always a choice. What do you suggest?" "We defy a direct order from the king. We'll be thrown out of the palace entirely. Then we can't help her at all." Marcus sat down heavily on the bunk. "So we just abandon her?" "We regroup," Thomas said firmly. "We find another way." But that night, as Marcus lay in his new post near the servants' entrance, he couldn't sleep. Somewhere in the East Wing, Eleanor was alone with strangers guarding her door, and Camilla was winning. The next morning, something changed. Eleanor's door opened for the first time in days. The new guards, stern-faced men with no connection to the princess, watched as she emerged. She was dressed in a simple gray dress, her hair pulled back severely. Her face was expressionless. Camilla appeared at the end of the hallway, smiling. "Good morning, Eleanor. I'm so glad you've decided to join us." Eleanor said nothing. She didn't even look at Camilla. She walked past her, down the corridor, her small feet making no sound on the marble floor. She was heading somewhere. Somewhere specific, and when Marcus heard where she'd gone, his blood ran cold. Eleanor had gone to her mother's grave. It was in the palace gardens beneath an ancient oak tree, a simple stone marker with Queen Catherine's name, dates, and a single line, "Beloved wife." Mother, Queen. Marcus found her there an hour later. She knelt in the grass, the cardboard crown placed carefully on the grave. Her lips moved silently, as if she were having a conversation only she could hear. Marcus approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Princess." She didn't turn around. He knelt beside her, keeping a respectful distance. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Eleanor's small voice broke the silence. She said, "I have to throw it away." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "The crown?" Eleanor nodded, still staring at the grave. She said, "It's garbage." She said, "Keeping it makes me weak." Who said that? Her? Eleanor didn't need to say the name. "She came to my room last night." After the new guards let her in, Marcus felt anger surge through him. What else did she say? Eleanor's hands twisted in her lap. She said, "My mother isn't coming back. That I need to stop being a baby. That if I want to be a real princess, I have to be strong." "You are strong," Marcus said gently. "I don't feel strong." Eleanor's voice cracked. "I feel empty." Marcus looked at the small cardboard crown resting on the grave. It was starting to fade now, the paint chipping, the edges bent. But to Eleanor, it was priceless. "Your mother made that for you, didn't she?" he asked. Eleanor nodded. "For my 5th birthday, we had a tea party, just us. She said every princess needs a crown, but the best crowns are made with love, not jewels." A tear rolled down her cheek. "I don't want to forget her." "You won't," Marcus said firmly. "No one can make you forget someone you love. Not Camilla. Not anyone." Eleanor finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were redrimmed, exhausted. "Why does she hate me?" The question was so simple, so innocent, and so devastating. Marcus chose his words carefully. "She doesn't hate you, princess. She's afraid of you." Eleanor blinked in surprise. "Afraid of me?" You remind her that she's not your mother, that she can never replace Queen Catherine, and that scares her, because she wants your father's love all to herself. Eleanor looked down. "Does my father love her?" Marcus hesitated. "Your father is lost right now. He's hurting, just like you. And sometimes, when people hurt, they make choices that don't make sense." "He doesn't talk to me anymore," Eleanor whispered. "He doesn't even look at me." "'Cause you look like your mother," Marcus said gently. "And that breaks his heart every time he sees you." Eleanor absorbed this, her young mind trying to understand adult pain. "Is that why he lets her be mean to me?" Marcus didn't answer right away, because the truth was complicated and cruel. Finally, he said, "Your father isn't himself right now, but one day he'll wake up. And when he does, he'll see what's been happening. Until then, you have people who care about you. Thomas and I, we're still here. We'll always be here." Eleanor looked at him, something flickering in her eyes. "They moved you. You're not outside my door anymore." "No," Marcus admitted. "But that doesn't mean we've stopped protecting you." Eleanor reached out and picked up the cardboard crown. She turned it over in her hands, studying it like it held all the answers. "She wants me to get rid of this," Eleanor said quietly. "She says it's in the way of me moving forward." "What do you want?" Marcus asked. Eleanor looked at the crown, then at her mother's grave, then back at Marcus. "I want to keep it, but I'm scared of what? That if I keep fighting her, she'll make my father send me away." Marcus felt his heart shatter, because he knew it was a real possibility. Camilla had that kind of influence now. "Listen to me," he said, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Whatever happens, wherever you go, you are Catherine's daughter. You carry her strength, her kindness, her love. No one can take that from you. Not Camilla. Not anyone." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "I miss her so much." "I know," Marcus whispered. "We all do." Eleanor threw her arms around him, and for the first time in months she cried openly. Not silent tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook her small frame. Marcus held her, letting her release the grief she'd been holding in. When she finally pulled away, her face was blotchy and wet, but something had shifted. There was a tiny spark in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "I'm going to keep it," she said, clutching the crown. "I don't care what she says." Marcus smiled. "Good." They walked back to the palace together, Eleanor carrying her crown like a torch. But as they approached the entrance, they saw Camilla standing in the doorway, watching them. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes were calculating. She had seen everything that evening. Camilla requested a private meeting with the king. Marcus and Thomas didn't know what was said behind those closed doors, but by midnight, new orders had been issued. Princess Eleanor was to be sent away. The official reason was education and refinement. She would attend a prestigious boarding school in Switzerland. Far from the palace, she would leave in 3 days. When Marcus heard the news, he felt physically ill. "They're exiling her," Thomas said, his voice hollow. Camilla finally found a way to get rid of her. Marcus paced the small guard's room, his mind racing. "We have to do something. What can we do? We're just guards. We're the only ones who care about her." Marcus shouted. "Everyone else is too afraid of Camilla, or too loyal to the king. If we don't act, Eleanor gets sent away to some cold school where she'll be forgotten." Thomas stood, his jaw set. "What are you suggesting?" Marcus met his eyes. "I'm suggesting we remind the king who his daughter is, and what he's about to lose." The plan was dangerous. It could cost them everything. But looking at each other, they both knew they had no choice. Sometimes loyalty means risking everything, even if it means standing against a king. Asterisk the next morning. Marcus and Thomas made their move. They waited until Camilla left for her daily spa appointment, a routine she never missed. The moment her car pulled away from the palace, they went to Eleanor's room. The new guards stood at attention. "Blocking the door? We need to see the princess," Marcus said. "No unauthorized visitors," one of them replied mechanically. "Orders from Ms. Camilla." "We're not visitors," Thomas said calmly. "We're royal guards. We've served Princess Eleanor since she was born. Now you serve elsewhere," the guard said coldly. "Move along." Marcus stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. "That little girl is being sent away in 2 days. We're going to say goodbye to her. You can either step aside, or we can make this difficult." The two guards exchanged glances. They were bigger, younger, and probably better trained. But there was something in Marcus's eyes that gave them pause. Finally, one of them shrugged. 5 minutes. Then you leave." Marcus nodded and knocked gently on the door. "Go away," came Eleanor's small voice. "Marcus and Thomas, Princess. May we come in?" There was a pause. Then the sound of small footsteps. The door opened a crack, and Eleanor's face appeared. Her eyes were puffy from crying. "You came?" she whispered. "We'll always come," Thomas said gently. They entered her room and closed the door behind them. Eleanor's belongings were already being packed. Trunks sat open, half filled with dresses and books she'd probably never asked for. The cardboard crown sat on her nightstand, the only thing that seemed to belong to her. "You're sending me away," Eleanor said, sitting on her bed. "Father told me this morning," he said. "It's for my own good." "Did he say why?" Marcus asked. Eleanor picked at her dress. "He said I need structure, discipline, that the palace isn't good for me right now. He said that." Thomas frowned. "Those exact words?" "No," Eleanor admitted. "She did. Father just nodded. Marcus felt his jaw clench. Camilla's words, spoken through the king's silence. Eleanor Marcus knelt in front of her. "Do you want to go to this school?" She shook her head, tears welling up. "I want to stay here. This is where my mother is. If I leave, it's like I'm leaving her behind." It's asterisk. "You're not leaving her behind," Thomas said gently. "She's in here." He tapped his chest, over his heart. "But I don't want to go," Eleanor's voice cracked. "Why won't Father listen to me?" Marcus and Thomas exchanged a look. This was the moment. The decision that could change everything. What if Marcus said carefully, "We could help you talk to your father." Really talk to him, alone, without Camilla there. Eleanor's eyes widened. "He won't see me without her. She's always there." "That's because he doesn't know you want to talk to him," Thomas said. "What if we made sure he knew?" Eleanor looked between them, hope and fear warring on her face. "How?" Marcus pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "We're going to deliver a message. From you to him, but it has to be special. Something only you could write." Eleanor took the paper, her hands trembling. "What should I say?" "Tell him the truth," Marcus said. "Tell him what you're feeling. Tell him what you remember about your mother. Tell him that you need him." Eleanor stared at the blank paper. Then she looked up at them, her voice small. "What if he doesn't care?" "He cares," Thomas said firmly. "He's just forgotten how to show it. We're going to help him remember." Eleanor picked up a pen from her desk. For several minutes, she wrote. The guards watched silently, giving her space. When she finished, she folded the paper and handed it to Marcus. "Will you really give it to him?" "We promise," Marcus said. "But you have to be ready. When he comes to you, you have to be brave. Can you do that?" Eleanor picked up the cardboard crown, holding it against her chest. "For my mother, I can try." Marcus and Thomas left her room with the letter hidden in Marcus's jacket. Now came the hard part. Getting to the king wouldn't be easy. Camilla had made sure of that. His schedule was controlled, his meetings monitored. She had isolated him, slowly and carefully, until he relied on her for everything. But Marcus knew something Camilla didn't. Every Thursday afternoon, the king visited the palace library alone. It was the one habit he'd kept from before Catherine's death. An hour of solitude among the books. Today was Thursday. Marcus and Thomas positioned themselves near the library. When they saw the king approaching, they stepped into his path. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, bowing. "May we have a moment?" The king looked startled, almost afraid. I'm quite busy. This will only take a minute, sir," Thomas said. "It's about Princess Eleanor." The king's face clouded. "Eleanor is being well taken care of. The school in Switzerland is excellent." "She doesn't want to go," Marcus said. "She's a child. Children often don't want what's best for them." "With respect, sir, have you asked her what she wants?" The king's expression hardened. "I've made my decision." "Now, if you'll excuse me, she wrote you a letter," Marcus said quickly, pulling out the folded paper. "Please, just read it." The king stared at the paper like it was a serpent. "I don't have time for her. She's your daughter," Thomas said, his voice cracking with emotion. "Queen Catherine's daughter. Please, your Majesty, just read it." Something flickered in the king's eyes at the mention of Catherine's name. Pain, longing, regret. Slowly, he reached out and took the letter. "1 minute," he said quietly. "That's all I'll give." He unfolded the paper and began to read. Marcus and Thomas watched his face change. The king's hands started to tremble. His eyes moved across the words, faster and faster. His breath caught. Then, to their shock, a tear rolled down his cheek. "Where is she?" he whispered. "Where's Eleanor?" "In her room, sir," Marcus said. "Being guarded." The king's head snapped up. "Guarded? Why would she need to be guarded?" "Orders from Camilla, sir. No visitors." The king's face transformed. Confusion gave way to realization, then to horror. "What have I done?" he whispered. He looked at Marcus and Thomas, truly seeing them for the first time in months. "How long? How long has she been alone?" Months, sir, Thomas said gently. The king's face crumpled. He clutched the letter to his chest, and for a moment he looked like he might collapse. Then something hardened in his expression. The fog that had clouded his eyes began to clear. "Take me to her," he said. Now they moved through the palace corridors, the king walking with sudden purpose. Staff members stopped and stared, shocked to see him moving so quickly, so decisively. When they reached Eleanor's room, the king didn't wait for permission. He pushed past the guards and opened the door. Eleanor sat on her bed, holding her crown. When she saw her father, her eyes went wide. "Papa." It was the first time she'd called him that in months. The king crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees in front of her. He pulled her into his arms and held her like he was drowning and she was air. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry, my darling girl. I'm so sorry." Eleanor's arms wrapped around his neck, and she cried too. "Don't send me away. Please don't send me away," never, the king said fiercely. "I will never send you away. I'm here now. I'm here." Behind them, Marcus and Thomas quietly stepped back. But their relief was short-lived. From the doorway came a cold, sharp voice. "Edward, what is the meaning of this?" Camilla had returned. The room froze. King Edward slowly stood, keeping Eleanor behind him. His face had changed. The hollow, distant expression was gone. In its place was something Camilla hadn't seen before. Anger, the meaning, he said quietly. "Is that I'm with my daughter." Camilla's eyes flickered to Marcus and Thomas. Then too, Eleanor clutching her father's hand. Her expression shifted through several emotions before settling on smooth concern. "Of course, darling," she said, her voice honey-sweet. "I just wasn't expecting." "I thought you were in your library." "I was interrupted," the king said. "By this?" He held up Eleanor's letter. Camilla's eyes narrowed slightly. "What is that?" "A letter from my daughter, asking me not to send her away, telling me how alone she's felt, how invisible." His voice cracked on the last word. "How she sits by her mother's grave every day because it's the only place she feels loved." Camilla's face remained composed, but Marcus saw the calculation in her eyes. "Eleanor is upset about the school, I understand. But children don't always know what's best. She's not going to Switzerland," the king said. Camilla blinked. "Edward, we discussed this. The school will provide structure, education. She's staying here, with me, where she belongs."
Oh.
Camilla's smile tightened. "Darling, you're emotional right now. Why don't we discuss this privately? Everything I've done for the past 3 months has been in private," the king said, his voice rising. "Hidden away, avoiding my responsibilities, avoiding my daughter. That ends now." Eleanor squeezed her father's hand tighter, her eyes wide. Camilla took a step forward, her voice dropping to an intimate tone. "Edward, please, think clearly. You're not well. You've been grieving, and it's affected your judgment. That's why I've been here, to help you make difficult decisions, to isolate me," the king said quietly. The room went utterly silent. Camilla's mask slipped for just a second. "What?" I said. "To isolate me?" The king's voice was steady now, each word deliberate. "From my staff. From my advisors. From my daughter. I've been in a fog, Camilla. A terrible fog of grief. And you used it? That's absurd, is it?" The king looked at her fully, seeing her for the first time. "When did my study become locked to everyone but you? When did Eleanor's guards get replaced with men loyal to you? When did my private secretary suddenly resign?" Camilla's face flushed. "I was protecting you." "Protecting both of you from what?" the king demanded. "From people who actually cared about us? From the staff who loved Catherine and love Eleanor? From people trying to manipulate you?" Camilla's voice finally showed emotion, sharp and defensive. "That little girl has the entire staff wrapped around her finger, playing on their sympathy, undermining my authority. She's 7 years old." The king roared. Everyone in the room flinched, except Eleanor, who pressed closer to her father. The king took a deep breath, visibly controlling himself. When he spoke again, his voice was cold and final. You will pack your belongings. You will leave the palace tonight. Camilla's face went white. Edward, you don't mean that? Do. After everything I've done for you. After I've stood by you, helped you, loved you, you love my position, the king said quietly. Not me. If you had loved me, you would have helped me heal. Instead, you tried to erase Catherine's memory. You tried to erase my daughter. Camilla looked around the room desperately, her composure crumbling. Her eyes landed on Marcus and Thomas. This is their fault. They poisoned you against me. They protected my daughter when I failed too, the king said. They showed more loyalty to my family than I did. Camilla's eyes filled with tears, but they looked calculated, practiced. Please, Edward, don't do this. I love you. No, the king said softly. You love the idea of being queen. The finality in his voice broke something in Camilla. The mask fell away completely, revealing the fury beneath. You're making a mistake, she hissed. That child will never let you move on. She'll keep you chained to a ghost forever. You'll die alone and broken, haunted by the memory of a woman who's dead and gone. Get out. The king's voice was like steel. Camilla stared at him, breathing hard. Then her eyes moved to Eleanor, and there was such venom in that look that Marcus instinctively stepped forward. You, Camilla said, pointing at Eleanor, you think you've won? But you're nothing. Scared little girl with a cardboard crown? When your father realizes what he's given up for you, he'll resent you forever. I said, get out, the king shouted. Guards appeared at the door, summoned by the commotion.
Out!
The king nodded to them. Escort Miss Camila from the palace.
Oh.
Make sure she takes only what belongs to her. Camilla drew herself up, trying to reclaim her dignity. This isn't over, it is, the king said. Goodbye, Camilla. They watched her leave, her heels clicking down the hallway for the last time. When she was gone, the room exhaled. The king sank into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted. Eleanor climbed into his lap, and he held her like he was afraid she might disappear. Papa, Eleanor whispered. Yes, my darling. Are you okay? The question was so simple, so full of concern. The king let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. I will be, he said. Now that I have you back? Eleanor rested her head against his chest. I missed you. I missed you too. More than you'll ever know. Marcus and Thomas began to back toward the door, but the king stopped them. Wait. They turned. The king looked at them, his eyes red but clear. Thank you for what you did. For refusing to abandon her when I did. We're just doing our duty, Your Majesty, Marcus said. No, the king said firmly. You went beyond duty. You risked everything. If I had remained the way I was, you could have lost your positions. Maybe worse. Some things are worth the risk, Thomas said simply. The king nodded slowly. Eleanor, do you still have the crown? Eleanor picked it up from where it had fallen on the bed. The cardboard was crumpled now, one corner torn. May I see it? The king asked. She handed it to him carefully. He turned it over in his hands, studying the faded paint and childish craftsmanship. His fingers traced the uneven edges. Catherine made this for you, he said softly. For my 5th birthday, Eleanor confirmed. At our tea party, the king's eyes filled with tears. I remember. She spent hours on it. She was so excited to surprise you. She said the best crowns are made with love, Eleanor whispered. The king pulled his daughter close. She was right. She was always right. He looked up at Marcus and Thomas. From now on, you're Eleanor's permanent guards. You answer only to her and to me. No one else. It's Your Majesty, they said in unison, and Marcus Thomas. Have my eternal gratitude. After they left, the king and Eleanor sat together in her room, talking softly. Outside the door, Marcus and Thomas took up their posts again. We did it, Thomas said quietly. We did, Marcus agreed. But as the sun set over the palace, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that while one battle had been won, the war wasn't over. Camilla was gone. But the damage she'd done, the grief that still haunted the palace, the long road ahead for both father and daughter, that was going to take more than one day to heal. Still, as he stood, guard outside Eleanor's door and heard, The sound of her laughter for the first time in months, Marcus smiled. It was a start. 3 weeks passed. The palace felt different now, lighter somehow, as if a dark cloud had lifted. Eleanor started eating in the dining hall again. She still carried her cardboard crown everywhere, but now she wore it sometimes. Perched crookedly on her head, paint flaking onto her shoulders, the staff whispered about the change, about how the king smiled again, about how Princess Eleanor had been heard laughing in the gardens. But healing wasn't a straight line. One morning, Marcus found Eleanor sitting by her mother's grave again. It was raining lightly, and she was soaked through, staring at the stone marker. He approached with an umbrella, holding it over both of them. "How long have you been here?" he asked gently. "I don't know," she said. "A while." Marcus sat beside her in the wet grass, not caring about his uniform. "What's on your mind, princess?" Eleanor was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "I'm scared." "Of what? That he'll forget again? That he'll go back to how he was?" Marcus felt his heart clench. "Your father loves you." "Loved me before, too," Eleanor interrupted, her voice small. "But he still left me alone." She was right, and Marcus couldn't lie to her. "You're right, he did." Eleanor looked at him, surprised by his honesty. "But here's what I know," Marcus continued. "People make mistakes, even kings, even fathers. Your dad was drowning in grief, and he grabbed onto the wrong person. But he woke up because of you." "Because of you and Thomas," Eleanor corrected. "You gave him my letter. He delivered it," Marcus said. "But you wrote it. Those were your words, your feelings. That's what reached him." Eleanor picked at the grass. "Oh, what if I'm not enough? Eleanor, look at me." She turned her tear-stained face toward him. "You are not responsible for your father's happiness. You are not responsible for fixing him. You were 7 years old. You're supposed to be a kid, not a therapist. And what do?" she whispered. "You be honest. When you're sad, you tell him. When you're scared, you tell him. When you need him, you ask. And if he ever starts to slip away again, you'll remind him. You don't let him hide. Can you do that?" Eleanor thought about it, then nodded slowly. "I think so." "Good. And if you can't, Thomas and I will be there to help." Eleanor leaned against him, and they sat together in the rain, watching the water drip from the oak tree's leaves onto Catherine's grave. "Do you think my mother would be proud of me?" Eleanor asked. "I think," Marcus said carefully, "your mother would be amazed by how strong you've been. How brave. How you've carried love even when everything hurt. I don't feel brave. Brave people rarely do. They just do what needs to be done, even when they're terrified." Eleanor looked down at the cardboard crown in her lap. It was even more damaged now, warped from the rain. "Marcus, can I tell you a secret?" "Always. Don't want to be a princess anymore. It's too hard." Marcus smiled sadly. "I understand. But Eleanor, you don't get to choose whether you're a princess. That's just what you are. But you do get to choose what kind of princess you'll be." "What do you mean?" "Some princesses hide from hard things. Some princesses pretend everything is perfect. But the best princesses? They feel everything deeply. They love fiercely. And they never forget where they came from. That's the kind of princess your mother was. I think that's the kind you'll be too." Eleanor wiped her eyes. "Even with a cardboard crown?" "Especially with a cardboard crown." That evening, the king summoned Marcus and Thomas to his study. It was the same room where they'd been reprimanded weeks before. But everything felt different now. The king stood by the window looking out at the gardens. When they entered, he turned. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Please, sit." They sat, exchanging curious glances. The king paced for a moment, then stopped. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened. About my failures as a father, as a king, as a man, Your Majesty." Marcus started. "Please, let me finish." The king held up a hand. "I allowed grief to consume me. I let someone manipulate me, isolate me from the people who mattered most. I abandoned my daughter when she needed me most. Those are facts I have to live with." He looked at them directly. "But you too. You didn't abandon her, even when ordered to. Even when it could have cost you everything." "Why?" Thomas spoke first. "Because we made a promise, sir. When Princess Eleanor was born, we were assigned to protect her. That doesn't just mean from physical threats. It means protecting her well-being, her heart. We love that little girl, Marcus added simply. Not because she's a princess, because she's Eleanor. And someone needed to remember that. The king's eyes glistened. Catherine used to say the measure of a person isn't what they do when it's easy. It's what they do when everything is falling apart. He crossed to his desk and opened a drawer. He pulled out 2 medals, royal commendations reserved for the highest acts of service. These don't feel adequate, he said, but they're all I have to offer. For unwavering loyalty, for protecting my daughter when I failed to, for reminding me who I'm supposed to be. He pinned a medal to each of their uniforms. There's something else, the king said. I want you both to know. If there's anything you need, anything you want, you need only ask. Marcus and Thomas exchanged glances. Actually, sir, Marcus said slowly, there is one thing. Name it. Eleanor needs more than just guards. She needs mentors, friends, people who will listen to her, support her as she grows. With your permission, we'd like to be that for her. Not just when we're on duty, but always. The king looked surprised. Then he smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. You already are. But yes, you have my permission. My blessing. As they stood to leave, the king spoke again. Marcus Thomas? One more thing? They turned. Thank you for not giving up on us. Either of us. That night, Eleanor had a nightmare. She woke screaming, tangled in her sheets, calling for her mother. Marcus was at her door in seconds, with Thomas right behind him. They found Eleanor sobbing, the cardboard crown crushed in her grip. She's gone, Eleanor cried. She's gone, and she's never coming back. Marcus sat on the edge of her bed. I know, I'm so sorry. It hurts, Eleanor gasped. It hurts so much. I know it does. The door opened, and the king rushed in, still in his nightclothes. Eleanor. He pushed past the guards and scooped his daughter into his arms. I'm here. Papa's here. She's gone, Eleanor sobbed into his shoulder. I know, my darling. I know. The king rocked her gently, tears streaming down his own face. I miss her too. Every day. Every moment. Does it ever stop hurting? Eleanor whispered. The king pulled back to look at her. No, but it changes. The pain becomes something you carry with you like a stone in your pocket. Some days it's heavy. Some days you barely notice it. But it's always there, reminding you of the love you had. Eleanor clutched him tighter. I don't want to forget her. You won't. I won't let you. We'll talk about her every day if you want. We'll remember her laugh, her kindness, her terrible singing. Eleanor let out a sound between a sob and a laugh. She couldn't sing at all. It's the worst I've ever heard, the king agreed, smiling through his tears. They sat together, father and daughter, sharing their grief. Marcus and Thomas stood by the door, giving them space but staying close. After a while, Eleanor's sobs subsided. She pulled back and looked at her father. Papa, can we have breakfast together tomorrow? Just us. The king's face softened. Every day, if you'd like. Every day, Eleanor confirmed. The king kissed her forehead. I love you, Eleanor. More than anything in this world, I love you too, Papa. As the king tucked her back into bed, Eleanor reached for the crushed cardboard crown. She tried to reshape it, but it was too damaged. It's ruined, she said sadly. The king took it gently from her hands. He examined it, turning it over carefully. Not ruined, he said. Just changed. Like us. Still here. Still loved. Just different than before. He placed it carefully on her nightstand. Besides, he said with a gentle smile, I think it's time we made you a new crown. Together. What do you think? Eleanor's eyes widened. Really? Really. We'll use cardboard and paint just like your mother did. But this time, we'll make it together. A crown that honors her memory, but looks forward to your future. Eleanor threw her arms around him. Thank you, Papa. No, thank you, he whispered, for not giving up on me. For reminding me what matters. Marcus and Thomas quietly left the room, closing the door behind them. They took up their posts in the hallway, standing guard as they always had. "It's really over," Thomas said quietly. "No," Marcus said, watching the light under Eleanor's door. "It's just beginning." Inside the room, father and daughter talked softly until Eleanor fell asleep, safe in her father's arms. The old crown sat on the nightstand, battered and faded but still standing, a reminder of love that survived loss, of strength that emerged from grief, and of two guards who refused to abandon hope even in the darkest times. The palace would face more challenges. Eleanor would grow up with the weight of loss on her shoulders. The king would stumble sometimes, still learning to be the father she needed, but they would face it together, because some bonds once remembered can never truly be broken. And some crowns, even ones made of cardboard, hold more power than gold. They hold love. And in the end, that's the only thing that matters.